Hi, my name is Desiree Nielsen, and on this episode of Live Kindly with me, I'll be talking to my good friend Dr. Nagra about soy. Is it really bad for you, or is it good? Let's chat about it and then stay tuned for 3 yummy recipes. Hey, Dr. Nagra, nice to see you. I'm excited to talk about soy with you.
Good to see you again too. Looking forward to it. There's this common conception that soy is estrogenic. And the reason that we have that is because soy contains what are called phytoestrogens.
I almost wish that we didn't call them phytoestrogens, we simply called them isoflavones, because as soon as we hear this word estrogen, we immediately make the connection between like our bodies, estrogen, and these plant foods.
These are sort of plant estrogen-like compounds that can bind to some of the same receptors as our own estrogens, but they have slightly different effects. In fact, they're a lot weaker.
So the bottom line is that all of the misinformation on the internet about phytoestrogens being equivalent to estrogen is untrue.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I mean, any concerns that we have really come from rodent studies or, one-off cases where people are consuming 12 to 20 servings of soy a day. At normal levels of intake for human beings, I just see no reason to be concerned.
I know in some of the older research, there had been some concerns with soy formula and again, goiter in babies, but modern research has disproven this theory.
As you mentioned, the latest research on the topic doesn't show any issue there. When they did lead to goiter, this was soy formula back in like the 60s and 70s when it didn't have iodine added to it. Of course, now it's mandated, so again, that no longer becomes a concern.
Soy milk-based formulas and soy protein-based formulas are in fact safe. Also, once we're weaning off of formula, it's really critical to know that the recommended plant-based milk alternative is soy milk. And the reason for that is that it has more protein and more fat than other plant-based milks, which often can be very low in fat, very low in calories. And this is a really important source of nutrition for growing bodies.
100% agree. And like all of our national organizations recommend, there's no reason to fear it.
I really think it's time for a soy milk comeback.
I know, it's my go-to for my smoothies for sure. This idea, actually, I don't know where this idea comes from, to be honest. When we look at the amino acid content of soy proteins, whether that's in tofu or tempeh or soy milk, it is very comparable in a lot of ways to a lot of animal proteins. It's high in leucine, which is the particular amino acid of interest for things like muscle building for athletes and strength athletes.
But it can also be so confusing because, myself included, many of us in the health professions are still sort of taught this old myth of protein combining. And I think that people hear this a lot, this idea that because plant proteins are incomplete, you have to have multiple sources of protein on your plate in order for your body to properly utilize those amino acids, because of course those amino acids are the building blocks of that protein. And we see now that the body is far more intelligent than we give it credit for.
Yeah, our body recycles protein all the time. We keep a pool of certain amino acids, so our body will combine and do everything for us. We don't need to think about it. Just make sure you aren't only living off of one food and you'll be good to go.
I mean, it'd be very boring just to live off of one food anyway.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I like kale, but human cannot live by kale alone.
Honestly, I'd probably live off of soy a lot, like half my diet.
I think half my fridge is filled with some sort of soy food in various stages of preparation, marinating, or leftover.
Yeah, mine too.
This concern really stems back to this idea of thyroid function or hormone function, or potentially that it is incomplete or inadequate to fuel muscle development. But once you realize that that's not the case, the only way I would ever question a soy-heavy diet is if we were talking about what we were just talking about.
At normal levels of intake, in the sorts of intakes we see across Asia, which is far more than we consume in the West here, there is absolutely no cause for concern, and there actually seems to be a lot of benefit, as we've already touched on.
I think that's really important. It's how do we define too much? Because you will often in the research get these outlier case studies where someone has been consuming, 17 blocks of tofu a day. And then we apply that to say, oh gosh, you shouldn't consume more than one serving of tofu. I mean, you have a soy-heavy diet. You consume multiple servings of soy per day, as do I.
Yeah, I to be honest, I have a block of tofu most days and probably a cup or two of soy milk and sometimes soy curls on top of that. Like, I love this stuff. It's super healthy. I'm not at all concerned for my own health. And I wouldn't be concerned about anybody else consuming soy at that level.
I love that you said soy curls, which honestly are one of the greatest inventions of all time. So, in essence, the internet is really, really wrong. And you can feel good about consuming soy in all of its forms, multiple servings per day.
Maybe you want to make sure you have more of a varied diet and not eat a soy-only diet, but that goes for any type of food out there. This one is built on a huge misunderstanding of where our soy production actually goes. 87% of the soy that's produced actually gets processed into either soy oil or soy cake.
That number is shocking, 87%, right? Like 87% of the soy.
And now that soy cake is almost entirely used as animal feed. And only 6% of all of the soy that's produced actually goes directly to human consumption in the form of tofu, soy milk, tempeh, soy sauce, those sorts of food products.
It would take far less soy to feed us as humans than it does to feed us as humans when that soy is going through the intermediary of animal.
We'd actually be much better off switching away from the livestock, switching away from the dairy, more towards those soy products that we're going to be consuming ourselves, because you have to feed a pig or a chicken a whole lot of soy before they grow up to the size where we're actually going to be eating them.
Soy is such an incredibly nutrient-dense food and so valuable to anyone who wants to eat more plants. It's high in protein, it's safe.
I agree, and on top of everything you just mentioned, it's so versatile. You've got soy milk, you've got soy curls, as we mentioned, which is a great chicken substitute for anyone who's never tried it. Tofu can be used in just a whole host of ways.
Tofu is such a great way to not only provide that protein, but build variety.
So you support me having soy 3 times a day?
Wholeheartedly.
Okay.
So now that we've chatted with Dr. Nagra, we know that soy 3 times a day is a non-issue. So let's dive into some recipes. So we're gonna start with a strawberry pineapple smoothie with just 4 simple ingredients: strawberries, pineapple, hemp hearts, and vanilla soy milk. Now you can totally use frozen fruit to make this smoothie, but if you're using fresh, I highly recommend using about a cup of ice cubes just to help it get extra frosty and cold. Nice and simple, it is the prettiest color, and about 8 grams of protein thanks to the soy milk. Next, we're gonna make a tempeh BLT. Tempeh is a fermented soybean product, so it's a little bit different than tofu. I have marinated the tempeh in some soy sauce, some cumin, some smoked paprika to give it that sort of smoky, bacony flavor, and then pan-fried it 3 to 4 minutes on each side. So now we can assemble our sandwich. We're gonna start with 2 slices of your favorite whole grain bread, or I'm using sprouted grain bread here, and then a little bit of vegan mayo, both sides. Next, we'll layer on a little bit of the tempeh. Cut some nice thick slices of a vine-ripened tomato. A little bit of washed iceberg. You can also use romaine like I'm using. And there you have it, a nice tempeh BLT. Next for dinner, we're going to make a soba bowl with roasted tofu and squash. First, I will add the soba noodles. Soba noodles are a buckwheat and wheat noodle that I've just cooked according to package directions. Then I took the hot water from the soba noodles to wilt some bok choy and some enoki mushrooms in the colander. Next, we have some acorn squash, which you can actually eat with the skin attached. It's nice and soft. And finally, some roasted tofu. It's roasted without any oil, and then I toss it in a marinade of hot sauce, sesame oil, and soy sauce for some flavor. Then the finishing touch is to pour over a little bit of mushroom broth, which again, I seasoned with soy sauce. All done, ready for dinner. This is Desiree for Live Kindly. Thanks for watching. Did you learn anything new about soy, or do you have any questions about plant-based nutrition you need answered? Drop them in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.